Hello, welcome to the sideboard here at Grand Prix Miami. I'm Nick Miller alongside Forrest Mead. How you doing, sir?
Doing well, how are you?
Pretty good. You have got one of the spiciest brews in the room today.
It's an interesting collection of cards.
Yeah, it is what we're calling a white-black Constellation deck, or as you like to call it.
I call it Watch Your Meowth, because it's all underworld coinsmiths and cats with the Johnny's Pride Magoif or Pride Mate and Brimaz, King of Oreos.
We have seen some people toy around with the Johnny's Pride Mate and the game lands
Yep.
and like that kind of function before, but it's usually been in like a 3-color deck. You've gone strict white-black here. You got
Yep.
Seekers, Pride Mate, and Coinsmith all at your 2-drop.
Correct.
And I saw a match you play earlier, and you had a 6/6 Pride Mate on like turn 4.
Yeah, it's relatively easy. I played against a red-white deck, and I played a Pride Mate. He chose not to kill it, and instead playing a Seeker of the Way. And then I played a Scoured Barrens, gained a life, put a counter on it, and played an Underworld Coinsmith, gained a life, put a counter on it, and attacked for 4.
Yep.
And the look on his face when he realized his Lightning Strikes and Wild Slashes were not as good was worthwhile.
Right, so you've got the Constellation theme just all over this deck. Of course, you have the card of the tournament, Mastery of the Unseen, has just been in everyone's deck.
Yep.
An enchantment, so you've got
Correct.
your Constellation, as well as Doomwake Giant with Constellation.
Yep.
And a couple of other spicy ones that we'll get to here in a minute.
Sure.
Your other threats, Brimaz, Sorin, Light Form.
Light Form, yeah.
Now this is a draft/sealed all-star. How's it working in
is
this
a good
deck?
one. It's actually really great. It's 2 Devotion for Athreos. It has Evasion, which is also relevant, and a good number of matchups. So Lifelink is certainly good against any deck with red cards in it. And it's an enchantment, which obviously triggers both Underworld Coinsmith and Doomwake Giant. And more importantly, with Citadel Siege, building your own Baneslayer Angel is relatively effective against a lot of decks.
We've seen a lot of people start moving to the Citadel Siege.
Yep.
I've seen you use it in a couple matches very effectively, whether you're tapping a big creature down like a Siege Rhino
Yep.
or a Mantis Rider, or just making your dudes even bigger.
Right. When you're trying to, ride Master of the Unseen to victory or building up a Sorin or the board's cluttered, being able to tap down their only threat, non-Stormbreath Dragon threat, is quite strong. And obviously, if you're ahead and trying to build an advantage with a Seeker of the Way or a Pride Mate or a Brimaz, building those up is pretty good. And a lot of the Master of the Unseen matchups as well, there's a lot of life gain going on.
Yeah.
So being able to build all your creatures to 6 or 8 or 9 or 10 power is pretty relevant to get them down from 100 to 0.
Especially with the routes you can go with a flying creature with Light Form
Yep.
or the Sorin Vampire.
Correct.
You actually get to make your guys much bigger and have a way to break through the stalemate.
Correct. On top-
Athreos, oh, go ahead.
No, so on top of that, in the mirror against these other Mastery decks, being able to manifest and eventually find a Doomwake Giant in your deck with a good number of enchantments. Both players are doing nothing for a long time. I'm sure you guys will have fun with that for the next few months. But being able to break through that mirror by killing all of their Mastery tokens and leaving the board severely in your favor is pretty sweet.
I imagine getting 2 of those going, you get to take care of all of the opposing manifests as well in those matches.
I won game 1 and was playing game 2 against a green-white Constellation or green-white Mastery deck, and I had a Doomwake Giant in my hand, and for 4 turns I was manifesting 3 guys a turn, and could not find another Doomwake Giant or anything, and then finally manifested another Doomwake Giant because I still hadn't drawn an enchantment for the Doomwake in my hand.
Right.
Played him, and my opponent looked at me and said, "I didn't think I could lose with 11 lands and 3 Masters active, but you found a way."
Yeah, all of the manifests go away once you can just clear the board.
It's quite strong.
Wanted to mention Athreos,
Yep.
a card that got a lot of hype at the spoiler season, hasn't really lived up to it, but this deck, not only is its first mode where you can get the creatures back relevant, you actually can turn them into a creature.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to turn into a creature with Brimaz and Sorin and Coinsmith and Siege and Lightform. You have plenty of double-colored, double mana symbol cards to activate it, and with Coinsmith against a lot of the control decks, the game goes on for a while with Mastery. It's relatively easy to get a Coinsmith and play with either Mastery or naturally draw it, and then have a bunch of mana up and be able to kill your opponent with the lesser used second ability of Underworld Coinsmith.
Your removal, you have some Oblivion Rings / Banishing Light, which,
is good
helps
in the
your
deck.
devotion. And of course, Hero's Downfall and some Thoughtseize,
Yep.
along with a couple more on the board as your removal.
Yep.
So the deck is attacking from a lot of angles. You're gaining a lot of life, which is
It
good
is.
in this metagame
It
because
is.
everyone's trying to gain life.
Yep.
Let's look at the sideboard here. What stands out to me is the 4 Blood-Soaked Champions.
Yeah, we were really good game 1 against red decks and blue-black control decks. So being good against the control decks is sort of odd to have Bloodsoaked Champion in your sideboard, but the deck that can beat you is the big Abzan deck, the control deck. And having Bloodsoaked Champion in play with Citadel Siege and Sorin gives you a recurring threat in a deck that's attempting as many times as they can to 1-for-1 removal spell you. Having a recurring threat that with a Citadel Siege can easily be 4 power is pretty good. And if they choose to exile Bloodsoul Champion with Abzan Charm, more power to them.
Yeah.
Everything else is going to stay alive too. It's difficult to beat.
You'll take that win if they're using a 3-mana spell on your recurring 1-drop.
Yeah, and with Master of the Unseen, it's pretty easy to always have a creature in play. Usually that doesn't really matter to bring back your Bloodsoul Champions.
Right. All right, you've got some Glare Heresies, just the all-star in the format sideboard. Read the Bones for some grindier matchups.
Yep. Anytime the game's going to go longer, you want the extra read the Bones.
4th Mastery in the board, 2 erase.
Yep.
Enchantments are everywhere.
They are.
Hits opposing masteries.
It does. It hits Oblivion Rings. It hits all kinds of good things. Courser of Crufix is a card that can really let a lot of those decks stay in the game by drawing more cards.
And of course, you got some big game hero with End Hostilities.
Yeah, the green decks pretty much have to commit to the board pretty heavily, and as long as you have an Oblivion Ring or a Hero's Downfall for a Whisperwood Elemental, End Hostilities normally ends the game pretty quickly.
Yep. A couple more Thoughtseize round it out.
Yep.
What were your worst matchups and what were your best matchups on the weekend?
We really wanted to see as many mountains in play as possible. I saw only one matchup against them, the Jeskai deck. No red-white, no mono-red, and blue-black control and Sultai. Sultai's a little trickier, but Sultai Charm being able to kill some enchantments, but you've got so many game-breaking enchantments that they get spread relatively thin, relatively quickly, and a lot of times you don't know what you're doing, and therefore might use their Sultai Charms to kill Brimaz or Sift. We thought that the mid-rangey Abzan decks would be bad for us. That hasn't really been the case. I played 0 games against Blue-White Heroic because we dreamed the deck up this week and played it twice and won all 4 games pretty easily. They struggle against the Citadel Siege on Dragons. Honestly, I haven't played that much with it, so it's difficult to say what's bad, but if I had to guess, most of the green ramp decks can be a little tricky. And if I'm playing against the green-white Mastery deck and they have Setessan Tactics, that one can break up in the mirror pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, definitely. And you worked on this deck with Chris Fennell, correct?
I did. Chris and I were testing all kinds of horrible decks that didn't end up panning out all week. With a blue-red deck we lost the finals of an 8-man to a mono-white Nykthos Master of the Unseen Spirit Bonds deck, and decided maybe we'll look at Nykthos and Master of the Unseen and messed around and played some games. The deck was fun, but could lose to Stormwrath Dragons if you didn't have an Elspeth.
Right.
Or you weren't too far ahead at that point. And then toyed around with some colors, thought about blue for afar, eventually settled on black, and then realized that black had a lot of things we wanted. Coinsmith's great against the control decks. Doomite Giant breaks up in the Mastery Mirrors. Sorin's a great card for a deck. Obviously getting Thoughtseize and Hero's Downfall are powerful cards and handle most of the threats that are good against us. Elspeth is normally, for most people, the only card that has any chance of beating us, but with Doomwake and Hero's Downfall, you can usually take care of that.
Well, the deck looks very well positioned. What are you, 9-3 so far?
Yeah, I just picked up a 3rd loss.
All right, well, you've had a pretty deep run.
Yeah,
the deck is awesome. I hope a lot of people gravitate toward it because it's definitely a new concept, and it's nice to see Underworld Coinsmith and some of these lesser-known cards get some action.
Definitely.
Forrest, thanks for sitting down with me here on the sideboard. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Miami.
Thanks.